Welcome to the Anti-Social Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to all the new listeners that have taken the time to give this a shot. I encourage you to go back and listen to some of the episodes where I've got some guests on. Lots of cool conversations and things that I've learnt along the way, and heaps of cool stuff coming up in the future as well, with plenty of other guests that I've got lined up. This is a bit of an interim episode that I have. I've sort of lost a bit of focus over the last couple of weeks and haven't really been stockpiling the interviews as much as I would like. And I found myself a bit behind the eight ball this week. So I'm desperately trying to get at least something out so that you guys have got something to listen to. But it's a big thing for me to keep this regular and keep this weekly. Just a bit of reassurance. I've got quite a few people that are lined up and hopefully we'll get those interviews locked in and recorded and edited and everything over the next week or two. A lot of cool people, a mixture of music-related guests and a few people that I've contacted in a sense, kind of like a cold call or a cold email, so to speak, that I would normally not ever reach out to. But I guess that's one of the benefits of this podcast, is that I've got a great excuse to start talking to people that I normally wouldn't. And not because I wouldn't want to, but just because I would have no real reason to, without it feeling a bit awkward and unusual. So it's great to have a bit of a purpose to go in there and to start approaching these people. So you'll see as the weeks come on that I've got a lot of cool people that are very left of field, and people that would a lot of you might not expect either. But the reason for my focus being a little bit off the last couple of weeks is that I've just moved house. I'm still in the process of moving house. I'm doing it all ourselves, myself and my fiance. So we've just bought a house down the south coast. So just in between everything else going on in our lives, we're taking carloads down in our own time just to slowly fill the house up and do a bit of cleaning and some light renos and a lot of sort of general stuff. So I'm actually down at the house at the moment for a couple of days, working from home and just trying to get that work-life balance happening, which is quite good. At the moment, I'm sitting here waiting for a plumber to show up because I've found that there's a pipe out the back of the property that's burst due to it being old and rusted, and I hit it with a push-on mower this morning. So there was water spraying all across the backyard. So I've turned off the water. So I'm without water at the moment and just waiting for a plumber to rock up. And I'm also here waiting on a fridge to show up, which was meant to show up yesterday, but they cocked up and now they're coming this afternoon. So I'm sort of sitting here doing a bit of work and cleaning up around the place, and I thought, well, I've got a bit of time to kill in between everything, and I'll try and smash out a quick little podcast just to keep the momentum going. I can never say that word properly, and just have something out there for you guys to listen to. But over the coming weeks, as this all settles down, I'll get back into the groove of it. But as I said, there's quite a few episodes coming along anyway. One thing I just wanted to probably have a quick chat about, which I found really interesting and sort of found a renewed interest for, is learning another language. And I was listening to a podcast just recently. I think it might have been Tim Ferriss. He was interviewing, I'm going to get his name wrong, I think it's Louis von Ahn. And Louis is the creator of and owner of Duolingo. And it's a great app that you can use. It's a free app that you can download. I don't know if it's on Android, but I assume it probably is because it's a fairly well-known app. But it's definitely available on Apple devices. And it's an amazing program that you can learn a multitude of languages in a very simple and easy way. And it's almost like playing a small game that maybe somebody in primary school would play. But it's extremely effective, and I actually downloaded it quite a few months ago. It might have even been 12 months ago, and I started doing the German one, and I got distracted, as I always do, because I've got a bit of goldfish syndrome. I just forget what I was doing and move on to something else or whatnot. But I did quite a few little modules in the German one, and it was quite cool. but then I forgot all about it. But when I listened to this podcast interview the other day, it sort of renewed my interest in it all, and he explained in the podcast just different approaches and how much of an impact it's had globally across so many different countries, and people that are trying to learn, especially people that are trying to learn English for the first time. And a lot of the app is also helping do a lot of translation for documents and books and whatnot that have never been translated before. So part of doing the work, part of doing these modules in this app, you're also invited to do some further testing. Word testing is probably not the right thing, but some further learning by doing translation of certain documents and translating it back into your language. So, for instance, I've got the German one going at the moment, and you might get a document that's written in German, and they ask you to see what you can translate out of that document into English. So you might not translate the entire thing pitch perfect, but there's several hundred or several thousand other people that are all trying to translate that same document. And however it works, they get all the results together and they're able to, merge it all together and create a document that's sound enough that's got a satisfactory translation. So they offer this service to a lot of major companies that have got a lot of documents that need to be translated into other languages. So one of the examples that he used was CNN want a lot of their material translated into, I can't remember what the language was, it may have been Spanish or Portuguese or something like that. So they pay Duolingo, and Duolingo gets their users to do all this translation. And when you've got hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm not sure how many people actually use the app, it's probably in the millions, you find that a lot of these jobs that are given to Duolingo get done reasonably quickly and at a fairly satisfactory level. So apparently the CNN's been doing it for quite a number of years with Duolingo, so it's so far so good with them. So I thought that was quite cool. I thought it was, there's an additional purpose there to provide a service for people and provide a lot of translation to make communication between people all over the world a lot more fluid, and probably open the doors a lot more communication between cultures and people that probably, several years ago or decades or hundreds of years ago, everyone was a lot more segregated and weren't able to relate to each other as much because we couldn't communicate. And now it's a case that a lot more people are open-minded to learn each other's languages, communicate more with other people, and whether that be verbally or through written communication as well. So one of the things that he mentioned in this podcast was, or Tim asked Lewis about what was the best approach to learning a language through the app. What's to be able to learn a language on a basic level, to be able to communicate and satisfactorily, is that a word? I don't know. It's quite ironic given I'm speaking my native language here. What would be a reasonable expectation as far as a learning approach? How many hours should you put in, etc., etc. And I guess it's common sense, but you don't really think about it too much. And it was quite interesting because he said a lot of people get on there and they see the statistics from people that use the app, download the app, use it, and then they look at the fallout rate. And they said a lot of people go in there and binge use the app and spend hours and hours and hours straight away absorbing as much information as possible, but then they tend to fade out a lot quicker than other people that have a more structured approach and just take bite-sized modules each day and make it part of their routine. So and to be completely honest, when I originally downloaded this, I was so excited with it, I just kept going and going and going, and I did I think 10 or 11 modules of the German program, and then realised by the end of it that I couldn't remember what I'd learned to start off with, and if the app wasn't in front of me, then I had no idea. Like if someone came up to me and started asking me the same questions, I might remember some of them, but overall I'd probably forget the majority of it because I was just trying to take in as much information as possible. And it was quite interesting. It was a bit of a moment for me because I'm always in a sense of panic when I read, when I watch something, and I've always got lists, I've got piles of books, I've got piles of movies and documentaries. I've got lists on my phone of all these things that I need to read and I need to watch. And I'm always in this sense of panic when I approach these things, because I'm reading with with the goal to get through the book as quickly as possible so I can get on to the next book, or watch the movie and look forward to the end of the movie so I can watch the next one. And it's this never-ending quest of trying to digest as much content as possible. But what I'm finding is the majority of the content that I'm taking in is not being absorbed, it's not being retained. So I mean, I'm definitely better for it than not trying and not reading or not watching anything at all. I'm still miles better than what I would have been if I never bothered to do anything in the first place. But I know that I'm doing myself a disservice by churning through so much material in the hope that I'll, find more enlightenment or, more intelligence or more knowledge and whatnot, when a very small percentage of what I'm actually taking in is being retained. So it was the same approach with this language app. And I thought, well, this is going to be all about routine more so than me just becoming obsessed about it again and smashing through it and trying to take in as much as I can. So I thought the recommendation was 20 to 30 minutes a day, which is approximately probably, 2 or 3 modules of each of the language programs. And I thought, if I can do that a day, and it's a bit of a difficult thing to try and add it into your routine, it's sort of like exercise and anything else that we're not used to doing, then I'd be interested to see where I'm at after a month, after 30 days of doing 20 to 30 minutes a day of a language. And like even yesterday was when I started it again, and instead of just picking up where I left off, I went right back to the start and started redoing all the modules again. And I only did 2 or 3, and I was very tempted to keep going because I was on a bit of a roll, but I really want to try this out and see whether I can push it and see where I can get after a month. And there's no goal here for me to be fluent in German, to be able to communicate, to be able to do anything in a business sense. For me, it's more of an appreciation of language. And I think if I can understand German to a degree, then I think I can understand my own language a bit better. And I can improve my English skills better by learning another language, if that makes sense. And I think for a lot of us that are native English speakers, we take the language for granted, and we become very lazy with the way that we articulate things, the way we communicate, whether that be verbal or especially written these days, with how quick everything is, and people seem to have less of a care for written communication. As you can see, probably people that use social media find there's a lot of interesting ways of spelling, let alone basic punctuation and grammar. So I think we take a lot of it for granted, and we don't appreciate these noises that come out of our mouths. And in some way, we're able to articulate a feeling, an idea to another person by just moving our mouth in a certain way, moving our tongue in a certain way to create a sound, because that's all we're doing. We're projecting sounds to each other. And I think for a lot of us that are native to the English language, we don't appreciate that. Many of us don't. So I think for me, if I can start to absorb other languages and just get a basic understanding of them, and hopefully, a bonus is for me to be able to communicate with somebody in German. Next time I go to Germany again, to be able to speak to somebody, or just to be able to get around. One of the things I mentioned in a previous episode was when I was last in Germany by myself, and I was trying to get around and just talk to people. And there were people that spoke English, but because I looked like everybody else, everyone assumed that I spoke German. And when they realized that I couldn't speak German, not that they cared too much, but they had to recalculate, they had to change their approach to me and start speaking to me in their broken English or whatever it might be. And I felt very foreign. But I just felt like I was inconveniencing people as well. And it's a bit of a respect thing. And I think, everyone's got a different opinion of this, but I like to look at it that, if I'm going to another country, I should at least have an attempt to speak the language, and to go in there without any knowledge of how they communicate and just expect people to speak English is very ignorant, and I think it can be interpreted as being rude. So it was very was a bit of a challenge for me. It definitely was a bit of a shock to me, because in the past when I've gone to Europe and been to Germany, I've been with a group of people and you don't notice it as much. You're there as a group of people in a team or whatever it might be, and you're all communicating and you don't feel as isolated. But when you're there by yourself, and for anybody listening who's travelled internationally into foreign speaking countries by themselves, I can only assume that you probably experienced a similar feeling. So, and the appreciation from locals when you do attempt to speak the language, even if you're crap at it, it certainly goes a long way. And I've definitely found that when I go to Japan and I can speak a little bit of Japan, a little bit of Japanese, on a very basic level. Not that I could have a conversation, but I can say hello. I can ask, which direction is something. I can ask how much something is. I can say excuse me, which I say all the time, and just the basic pleasantries. And for me, that's always been enough to get me by. And the Japanese people that I've had conversations with and interacted with over the years have all been very impressed and very happy that I've made an attempt to try and speak their language. And it's certainly a great feeling to be able to have that connection. You really are reaching out to speak to somebody from a completely different culture when you're able to converse in their tongue to a degree. But even from a Japanese point of view, I got to a point where I started making a lot of friends in Japan, and I could only commute, and some of them were very fluent in English, and that was great, and others were not very good at English whatsoever. So a lot of our communication was on a very basic level. But I did find after a while that my pleasantries and my words, my simple words and simple ways of communicating only brought me so far. And I started to feel guilty because I wasn't frustrated at them that they couldn't speak English. I was frustrated at myself that I couldn't speak Japanese, because I was in their home. I was in their country, and I've come to them. And for me to try and speak to them in my own native tongue in their country, just wasn't appropriate. And so I definitely felt a real sense of guilt after a while that I really should have been learning more. And I've taken multiple attempts to try and extend my knowledge of Japanese, but it's not that it's a difficult language, but it's very difficult to stay strict to it and stay on a plan and a path to ensure that you've got that routine down, just as I've been talking about with the German thing. But that's something I would like eventually down the track, that I can speak fluently to the people that I've grown close to over the years, and really, really understand who they are and really learn about them more and get to know them better, because I can only get to know them to a point through our basic means of communication. I'm going off on all sorts of directions. I've got no structure to this podcast, by the way. I'm just winging it. So bear with me. But one of the things I did notice when I did speak to those people in Japan that I'd grown quite close to, that couldn't speak a lot of English, is that it's amazing what you can convey and what you can express without words. I think you really do appreciate language a lot more when it's removed, when you can't communicate anymore verbally, and you really have to rely on your body language, the way that you hold yourself, the way that you articulate a function or a task or anything. You have to be very conscious and very aware of what's going on. And sometimes your interpretation of how a certain phrase or whatever in a bodily sense may be completely different to how somebody from another country interprets it as well. One example that just popped into my head, when we would go over and play in Japan, and this might actually not be a Japanese thing at all, I think it might be universal anyway, so it's probably not the best example, but one thing that we would do is when we were on stage sound checking, we'd be checking our monitors. So for people who aren't musically inclined or haven't been in a band or anything as such, your speakers that are on stage that face you. So while you're playing on stage, you can hear yourself. So it's different to the PA speakers that are facing out to the crowd. There's speakers that run along the front of the stage and off to the sides that face the band, so we can hear what we're doing, what we're playing. Mainly for vocals, but it can be used for everything if need be. So one of the things that we do during sound check is to make sure that the levels that are coming through the on-stage speakers are okay. So we go through and we test all of our guitars, we test the microphones, we test the drums, we play together as a band, make sure that the levels are okay, and we're able to hear everything together with, because there's a lot of volume there. So we've just got to make sure that everything cuts through, it sounds clear, and we also have to compensate for when the room eventually fills up with people as well, because then the dynamics and everything changes after that as well. So one of the things that we usually do is we're standing on stage and the person, especially with these smaller venues, there's nobody on the side of the stage moving, playing with these monitors. In bigger venues, you usually have a monitor person who sits off to the side of the stage, so it's a lot easier to communicate with them. But in a lot of these smaller clubs, everything's at the front of the house, up at the console desk. So you're communicating from the stage to the console desk, and even when you're both speaking the same language, it can be quite difficult if people don't turn microphones on or whatnot. But usually with some hand movements, you can communicate. And one of the things that we found was when we needed additional volume is we would just point upwards with our index finger and just point up, and then just point down with our index finger. Very simple. So up, low, up, down, or whatever. So that's fine. And then when we're okay and everything sounded good, we just give the thumbs up. Now, in Japan, whenever we gave the thumbs up, they didn't take that as everything's okay. They took that as a gesture as volume needs to go up. So whenever we did the thumbs up and we said okay, they increased the volume. So when we came to start actually playing the show, everything was smashing through, and we're like, oh geez. And we had to sort of try and gesture in between songs and parts of the song to try and get the levels back down to an appropriate level. So that was one thing where the interpretation of the thumbs up was completely different to the Japanese, to what it was for us. And I don't know whether, I don't work in the audio industry, so I don't know whether the thumbs up is traditionally seen as a volume up gesture. But I haven't seen that sort of miscommunication anywhere else apart from Japan. So we've had to be very aware of that. But just conversing with friends and people, just being very aware of how I move my hands, move my arms, how I point to things, how I move my eyes, how I gesture in certain directions. I have to be very, very aware of that to ensure that I'm conveying the best possible message at this point in time, even if and 9 times out of 10, it's not anything complex. They're very simple things that I'm trying to express, and vice versa for my Japanese friend who would be doing the same thing. You can't. It's very difficult to convey anything that's complex, but to be able to convey something very simple may involve a lot of complex thought, so to speak, to be very conscious and aware of what you're trying to do as far as communicating with your body. So anyway, totally gone off on a complete tangent there. But going back to what I was saying, learning the language for me is to get an appreciation of my own language and become better at it, become a better speaker of the English language, be a better communicator in a written sense. As a writer, I'd love to be able to write more and write in a more flowing way that makes a lot more sense and a lot more structured and a lot more engaging way. I do find that in some cases I can write very well, but in other cases I hit a brick wall. And I think once I appreciate the language a lot more, I think I will be a lot more conscious of what comes out and how I structure it and how I write it before I put it anywhere. So that's where my head's at. So with this app, by all means, anybody who's listening who hasn't used it before, you can get it at the Apple Store, and it's I'm just quickly pulling it up, and I can hear a bit of feedback on my mic here. It is okay. So it's Duolingo. So it's Duolingo. Download it, chuck it on your phone. Hopefully, it's on Android as well for all you Android users. And if anybody else is interested, maybe we can all band together and see what we can do as far as learning some languages. For me, it's not a quest to master German, as I said before, and German's just the first one that popped up. And because I've been to Germany quite a number of times, I thought that it'd probably be a language to learn that would be it would make the most sense at this point in time. Unfortunately, they don't have Japanese, they don't have any of the Asian languages at this point in time, but they are working on it. So I didn't pick Japanese, but I thought German would be a bit of fun. So I'm going to try and do 20 minutes a day, no more, no less, and just do it for a month and see where I'm at, and see if I can remember some more words than Brot, which is bread, Wasser, which is water, Frau, which is woman, Kind, which is child. What else was there? Mann, which is just man. And there you go. I've already forgotten them already. So there's a few things there, basic words and whatnot. And it is put in sentence structure, so you already start to learn sentences straight away. And now I'm putting myself on the spot. I can't even remember any of the sentences. Ich bin ein Mann. I am a man. Is that right? Yeah. Mann und eine Frau. A man and a woman, I think. I could be completely wrong and just fail miserably then. But anyway, so I'll see where I'm at after a month. If anybody else wants to join in, download the app. You can search for friends. So if you got me on Facebook, try and search for me and we'll link up on Duolingo and we can compare each other on a weekly basis. And then what I'll do after a month is I'll do another little episode and just probably touch base and see how I'm tracking. Maybe throw a few German phrases out there, and anyone out there who does speak German, you can laugh and hopefully not get offended by my horrible attempt at your language. And if anybody's got any tips with learning languages, I'd definitely be all ears as far as how other people have been able to learn another language. I've always been envious of people that have not grown up in a native English-speaking country and have learnt English through school, but especially people in Europe that are so close, in such close proximity to each other, where they have to learn a number of languages for all their neighbouring countries. So a lot of people are multilingual, and I've just always been envious of that. I've been extremely jealous. I always wish that that language in Australia was seen as more than just a hobby, because even in school it wasn't taken seriously. It was always something that was to add a bit of extra flavour, add a bit of variety to the curriculum. But it was never anything that was put in place as something that was taken seriously as a serious element of your education. And I think in Australia, some of the languages that we really should be learning are the languages of our migrants, our people here that are coming into the country now, or the people that have been here, where our large percentage of our migrants come from. So, whether that be Cantonese or Mandarin, Indonesian, Greek and Italian. German, I don't know what the percentage of German migrants are here, but there are Germans around. Japanese, definitely. So there's, and Arabic, of course. So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of purpose and a lot of, I think, real importance that should be put around learning languages in school in Australia, and not just making it as an add-on to the curriculum, but something that's just a fundamental that needs to be learned. It's an essential. It's a core topic that needs to be done. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. If anybody is interested in doing this, by all means, you don't have to learn German. From what I can remember, and I might actually pull up the app now, just so I'm not completely talking out of my arse. Bear with me a moment. There are a heap of languages on here, so you can pick and choose whatever you'd like. So just going through what I can see here at the moment, there's German, French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, Irish, actually, Danish, Swedish, Turkish, Esperanto, Norwegian, Ukrainian, and I think that's it as far as the main. They're the main ones for English speakers. So if you're not originally native to the English language, there might be some other ones in your native language that you can learn yourself. But by all means, pick anything you want. We can still compare each other. and see where you're at. But I'm gonna give German a stab, see where I'm at after a month. And it might be, the other thing I'm thinking is, after a month, if I've been able to absorb a fair bit and actually retain a large chunk of everything that I've taken in over the previous 4 weeks, then I might even just move on to another language just to get an understanding of that one. I have heard from people that are multilingual that once you can get your head around certain languages, then it's very easy to be able to pick up other ones, because there's certain structures that transcend across languages, and it's easier to pick up other languages once you've been able to get over that first initial hump. I don't think that applies to every language out there. I think there's some very unique languages, but I think, from my understanding, some of the main languages out there, if you can master one of them, or at least, not master, but if you can get your head around one of them, then it makes it a lot easier when you start to learn the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, or however far you want to go. But for me, I'd love to be able to speak basic in a number of languages where I could actually converse with people, and not in an in-depth conversation, but just on a basic sense, where I can communicate. I can probably have a little bit of a joke with somebody, and just get to know people a bit more. I think that'd be fantastic, and not have to rely on my own native language to be able to communicate with people. Maybe one day I can do a German version of my podcast. So anyway, that's enough. I've rambled on for enough. Thank you so much for listening. As I said, download the app and let me know what you think. If you've got any tips or advice, or if you've had these struggles yourself, I'd love to know what you've done in the past, or even just to learn of your experiences. And we'll see where we go over the coming weeks and months. A bit of housekeeping before I wrap up. Podcast is going amazing, really, really well. The core countries at the moment, of course, Australia. The majority of my listeners are coming from Australia, but coming up second is the US, then the UK, New Zealand, India, and then it sort of branches off after that to a number of other countries. But I can see I'm trying to get my head around the podcast world and where the core audiences are for podcast listeners. And I still think that the US appears to be where the majority of the podcast world sits at the moment. I think podcasts seem to be far more popular there than they do, for instance, in Australia or the UK or New Zealand. But the majority of my listeners are obviously listening from Australia, just given where I am in. But I'm definitely trying my best to push podcasts out to more people that normally wouldn't listen to podcasts. I'm hoping that people become encouraged to listen to podcasts through people like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, Duncan Trussell, Mark Maron. I'm just trying to think of other people off the top of my head. There's so many amazing podcasts, and they're the podcasts that got me into it and got me excited about this whole media platform, and then in turn got me to a point where I wanted to do one myself. So I'm hoping that that other people will find a way to get into this whole podcast thing, and in turn then come and discover my podcast. I'm definitely not in the mindset that I think that my podcast will be the turning point for people to become absorbed into the whole domain of it. But I hope that whatever it is that gets you interested in this medium will in turn make you a regular listener of my podcast as well. So in order for you guys to help me out, as always, for iTunes listeners, get onto iTunes. It takes you 2 minutes. Click the stars, however many stars you want to give me. I think it's out of 5. Give me a rating. Leave me a 1-sentence review. The algorithms from the ratings and reviews plus the plays each week are calculated, and that determines your chart position. So I'm hoping by later this year that I'll be sitting further up in the charts. If you're not on iTunes, you're using another podcast player. If there's any way of rating through those players or leaving comments, anything will be a massive help. You'll be amazed at how much more traction things can get with just a simple bit of interaction like a comment or whatnot. A lot of these websites are worked on algorithms and tend to push the ones up that have a bit more activity further up the list with a bit more visibility, and the ones that don't have any interaction tend to sit dormant at the bottom of the pile and never get any visibility whatsoever. So anything that you guys can do, even if it's just a couple words or anything like that, it all helps. If you don't want to do that, simply just share the episodes, share them on Facebook, on Twitter, through Instagram, whatever it might be, get out there and shoot them through to people. There might be somebody that might be interested, for instance, in the strongman stuff that I put up just recently with Ben. So someone who's into weights and fitness and whatnot may find that really interesting, who normally wouldn't be interested in the music side of things. So if anybody thinks along those lines and finds somebody that might be interested in a particular episode, please pass it on. It would be fantastic to get more listeners in that aren't just within the initial circles of our music realm. And I'll continue to push that in different directions as time goes on as well. Facebook, just search for Andy Social Podcast, but it's Andy Dowling Official. Facebook.com/Andy Dowling Official if you want to type it in. I'm Andy Dowling on Twitter. Instagram, I'm Andy Dowling. All the Lord stuff, lord.net.au. The store's there. If you type Lord Official into most of the social media platforms, we're all there as well. If you haven't bothered to check out any of our music, please do. It'd be great if you give it a shot. And lastly, before I wrap it up, I mentioned on the last podcast about putting together a podcast event. Not so much a podcast event, but a get-together or a catch-up. Still haven't locked in a date, but I'm looking at late May. April's pretty crazy with a lot of international tours for music. And May is quite busy for me, but I think the last couple of weeks of May might end up being an appropriate window to put something on. So for those who didn't listen to the last episode, I'll lock in that date pretty quickly. I want to give everyone plenty of notice. If you're in the area, you're in Sydney or in the outer areas of Sydney, by all means come along. What it'll be is something that starts around midday or 1 o'clock, so it doesn't take away from anybody's existing plans at night, so less clashes. Come out. It'll be just a case, it'll be a catch-up where we can drink. There won't be any formal affair. We won't have like seats or anything like that. It'll just be, let's meet up in a bar and chat and hang out. And I might sort of add some additional things to it just to make it something special, I guess. But I haven't quite thought of that yet. But we'll get to that as time moves on. The cool thing that I want to make about put around this whole thing is that I won't be putting anything on social media. I won't be mentioning it anywhere. There won't be any Facebook invites. There'll be nothing sent out. No emails, no text messages, nothing. Purely on here. So whatever I decide to do, whatever date I lock in, will be purely communicated through these episodes. So if you're listening, then you'll know what's going on. If you don't listen, then you won't know. Now, by all means, if you want to tell other people, then you can do so. I really don't care. But for me, I thought it'd be kind of cool just to make it exclusive and we can just meet up. And even if there's like a small number of us, like, 5 or 10 people, then whatever, that it'll still be fun. We'll have a great time. And then I might just make it a regular thing, maybe twice a year, where we just do a catch up. And if I give people plenty of notice, maybe there's people from other parts of the country or from overseas who are planning to travel to Sydney for holiday or for work or anything like that. Maybe this date or a date in the future might line up with a time that you're in Sydney. So this offer is open to anybody listening to the podcast. So if we happen to have an international visitor that's just stopping by at that time, then even better. So I'll continue to let you guys know as updates come along, but it will be one of the last weekends in May. It'll be a Saturday, so I don't even have the dates in front of me, but it's either going to be 1 or 2 dates in May. So have a look at your calendars. I'll lock that in fairly quickly, and it'll be a pub or bar somewhere in Sydney itself. So more than likely it'll be somewhere CBD or the inner suburbs. I'm thinking just for convenience for people to get to a central spot, maybe somewhere around Surrey Hills. There's a couple of cool bars there that got some cool craft beer and sort of stuff like that. So maybe that might be an option where it's very casual. I won't book anything. Well, not this stage, but we'll see where this all goes. And we'll just meet up and have a few drinks, and I'll have a few other things on hand just to make it a little bit special. So keep that in mind, and I'll provide further updates down the track. But once again, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for sticking out through this podcast. I think now I might have to go out and go and find some lunch because I haven't got a fridge. I've got no food here, and I've got a little bit of time before the plumber and the fridge guy rocks up. So I might go and do that and then come back and do a bit of work. All right, guys, speak to you next week. Cheers.